Why are scientists studying this banned 1918 flu in secret? Subscribe for more of what you won't hear in the corporate media. Denise Grady writing in the New York Times earlier this week that studies of a deadly form of the flu virus are going to resume. They were paused. They were suspended in 2014. This is research where they take a flu virus that may already be deadly and mutate it to make it more deadly, so that we can figure out what are the things that make it more or less deadly, and how can we create perhaps even a vaccine, an immunization against it. Because, the last time we had a truly deadly mutation of the flu, it happened on a pig farm, on a hog farm in Kansas in 1917, and spread all around the world as it was called the Spanish flu. But that was because troops from they were provisioning them and training them in Kansas near this hog farm, and they were getting their meat from there. And those troops were catching this flu, and before they had a chance to get, highly symptomatic, they were being shipped off to Europe for World War I. And many of them went to Spain, and the flu went boom all across Europe, and then they came back to the United States, and it killed millions of people. And so these two research teams, one's in Wisconsin and the other is in Holland in the Netherlands, they had been, by our government and the Dutch government, they had been ordered to stop their research in 2014. And now they're being allowed to restart that research. And because apparently they've come up with protocols to deal with these viruses in ways, the main concern was that they would develop a superbug and then it would get out. One of the researchers would get accidentally contaminated and go home, and their family would get it, and before anybody knew it, boom, it's out in the wild. Or that the virus itself might be being transported or something like that, and it might get out. And those are legitimate concerns. But they think that they've got that nailed down. But I've got a larger concern here, and I think it's a really important one, and that is, without a national health care system, with over 30 million people in the United States being uninsured, and another 100 million people having such crappy insurance with such high deductibles and copays that they tend not to go to the doctor when they should, we are sitting ducks for a flu epidemic or frankly any kind of epidemic of a deadly disease. We're just sitting here waiting for it to happen. And I think that in the context of this, the possibility of deadly pandemics, epidemics that are worldwide, other countries can deal with that. They have national health care systems. Mexico can deal with it, Canada can deal with it, Costa Rica can deal with it, Ecuador can deal with it. I think Colombia can deal with it. But we can't, because we've got all these uninsured and underinsured people who fundamentally lack access to health care for anything other than screaming emergencies. And typically when you get the flu at first, you don't think of it as a screaming emergency. It's a huge inconvenience and you feel terrible and you can't work for a few days, but most people get through it. But they won't get through one of these deadly flus, and they wouldn't get through the bird flu of 1918. In fact, there's even concern now that some of the graveyards, we talked about this on this program, I think it was a year or so ago. It was in the spring, and as climate change is continuing and getting far more aggressive, the farther north you are, the more rapidly the atmosphere is heating. Right? The atmosphere has heated by 5 or 6 degrees Fahrenheit up in the Arctic, whereas it's a little less than 1 degree at the equator. So the closer you get to the poles, the more rapidly climate change is happening. And I'm not sure if that's true of the South Pole as it is the North Pole, and if it has to do with the tilt of the Earth or what. I'm not sure exactly why that is. And it would be a good question to put to Michael Mann, but that is the situation. And so what was happening, and we talked about this, like I said, on the program about a year ago, was that there were these graves in the northern parts of Europe and in central Scandinavia, where people were buried during the winter with the Spanish flu, and they broke the ground and they got them into nearly frozen ground or frozen ground, and they got buried, and the ground froze, and it never thawed out. And so it was like a deep freeze refrigerator, and now that ground is thawing out, and in fact, in some cases, the ground is liquefying. It's got so much moisture in it, that has been ice for thousands of years, and now it's turning to water, and so it's turning into something that kind of resembles quicksand. And because the coffins are filled with air, in addition to a dead body, these coffins are just rising up to the surface. And these bodies of people who died from the flu, where the flu virus that infected them may still be viable, are starting to appear. I mean, we could see a repeat of the flu of 1918, and we have no national health care system for this, which takes us back to Tim Wu's piece in the New York Times. And the question that I was asking in the last hour is, when are we going to start doing the will of the supermajority, the vast majority, more than 2/3 of Americans? And when are we going to stop listening to the idiots on network television who sit around, these pundits who sit on these so-called panels for people who frankly should be reporting the news, but instead they're taking one story and saying, oh, let me get my panel on here and we'll talk about this for 5 minutes, and we'll get the opinion of a Republican and a conservative Democrat, and we'll try to pretend that we're not actually, it's pathetic, the whole panelization of news. And we're not hearing about this. And 75% of Americans want higher taxes on the ultra wealthy. When was the last time you heard a panel discussion about that? At least one that didn't ridicule it. As Tim Wu points out, 67% of Americans want guaranteed paid maternity leave. Every other developed country in the world has this. We don't. The state of Washington does. Governor Jay Inslee made sure that happened up there, but the rest of the country, nah, sorry. 83% of us want net neutrality. No conversation. No conversation in the media, much less in Congress. 60% of us want stronger privacy laws in the context of that. And, of course, you would apply that to things like Facebook. We're now finding out that Facebook, apparently, if you have two-step authentication, where you give them your phone number so that when you sign in, you put your password in, and then they send you a code to your phone, and you plug in the code so that they know for sure that it's you and you haven't been hijacked, that of course, they're taking your phone number and using it. What are they giving it to their advertisers, or they're selling it? Are they using it to, other people can search for it? I mean, and you can't turn it off. You can restrict it to your friends, but but you can't turn it off. It's bizarre. So 60% of us would like stronger privacy laws. 71% of us think we should be able to buy drugs from Canada. I mentioned a couple days ago the medication, the one medication that I do take, that's now like $100 a month for me, I can buy from Canada for less than $20 a month. And it's the exact same drug made in the exact same factory over in Hyderabad, India. 92% of us want Medicare to be able to negotiate lower drug prices. And yet, we're not hearing any conversation about any of these things in our media, and we're not hearing any action on any of these things coming out of Congress. And this, in my opinion, is an actual crisis. This is fueling anger on the part of average Americans. And Donald Trump in 2016 tapped into that anger. He said to Americans, the system is rigged. And all across America, people were going, you bet your butt it is. I want Medicare for all. And Donald Trump said, we're going to basically give it to you. He said, we're going to do away with Obamacare and replace it with something that is better, that's universal, that's less expensive. Well, the only thing that I know of that beats that criteria is Medicare for all, single-payer health care. Now, or some variation thereof, one of the European systems. Donald Trump promised us that. He got elected based on that promise. Now, yeah, he lost the election by 3 million votes, but he won the Electoral College based on that promise. He said he was going to bring our jobs home. Now, it looks like the whole thing with China, he's going to announce some grand victory in the next week or so, and it's going to be a scam. It's a Potemkin village. It's a phony baloney thing. It's a city made out of cardboard that's painted to look like a city, sort of thing. And that's coming. So, what is it going to take and the reason, of course, and Tim Wu identifies this in the New York Times, the reason why Congress doesn't pass these things is because they're owned by these giant corporations. I would add the reason why the media doesn't talk about these things is A, they don't want to offend the Republican Party because their whole model is having Republicans come on and talk, and B, many of these companies are their advertisers.